Hello and welcome to today's lesson, Visual Displays of Data. So we are looking at different ways to represent data using spreadsheet technology. So the goal today, I want you to be able to structure and organize data to allow the use of a spreadsheet and create that visual display. So exactly as I just said. Before we get into the actual processes itself, there are a couple of definitions that we have to be familiar with. So this would be stuff that you should be able to explain or identify when it comes to an assessment or the final project. So our first term today is frequency. So what does frequency mean? Frequency is the number of times an event or a variable occurs or an item occurs in a given category. I'm going to show you an example in the very first example of what that really means, but all we are doing is we're keeping track of how many times it happens. So if you were to ask people their favorite color, then you'd be recording, so i.e. favorite color, What you would do then is you'd set up a chart, red, blue, and you just create a tally for every time someone gives you an answer. So it's basically, if you want to think of it, as a formal tally. Frequency table. What is a frequency table? It's just a table in which each variable is listed and the frequency occurs with it. So, for example, continuing with my color example, I would have red, I would have blue, and I would have 5 and 3 based on what I did for the example above. So that's what a frequency table would look like. So it would be titled color and frequency, and it's just a record of how many times each of those variables did occur. Cumulative frequency. Cumulative frequency is the running total or the calculation as to how many events have occurred. Okay, so I only have 2 colors listed there, but what you're basically doing, let's see if I can squeeze it in here, red, blue, green, and you'd have the tally, so 5, 3, and let's say 4 for green. Your cumulative tally would be over here, and basically it is 5. When we move to the next one, it would be 5 plus 3, so 8 events have occurred. When we go to the second variable, 8 plus 4 equals 12, so we end up with your 5, 8, 12. So it's a calculation of, as we move down the sheet, how many events have occurred. So it's basically you're adding up the previous frequencies. Relative frequency. What does that mean? Relative frequency is a table to show the frequency of the data as a fraction or percent of the whole data. So we would just represent it as a percentage. It ends up giving you the same shaped graph. So if I just use red and blue again, we know the frequency is 5 and 3. So a relative frequency would be 5/8 for red and 3/8 for blue. So we're just representing it as a decimal or a percentage, whichever it suits. But it gives you the exact same shape. There's a time and place to use that. And finally, a histogram. A histogram is a bar graph. It's a fancy name for a bar graph. And what it does is we plug in or we show the frequency in which each event or variable occurs. So it ends up being a bar graph. So if I continue along with my examples, we'd have frequency here. You'd have color along the bottom. Running out of room here. I guess I can extend it. You guys can just write below it on the page. Color. Oops, American spelling, there's Canadian. So I would have red, blue. So we'd end up with just a bar graph. Okay, going back to grade 3, 4 with that. So there we go. There's the terminology. You do need to understand all the terminology because we do use the terminology throughout the note and the homework. So the first example, I'm going to use a combination. I'm going to have the computer out as well, so you can kind of follow along. Make sure you understand if you're not comfortable with the spreadsheet, maybe you have the spreadsheet running at the same time to see if you can replicate it. If you are, you can kind of zip through and kind of pick off what you need to know. So A part, create a frequency table. So it looks like we're dealing with the days of the week, so our data is off to the right here. So I'm going to have the heading days, and here I will have frequency. So I list my days of the week: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I have all my variables or events written or listed. Now I go through and determine the frequency. So I go and count off. So I basically go start picking them off. So I'll start there. Monday occurs once. Tuesday occurs. Wednesday, Thursday, Monday, Friday, Sunday, Wednesday, and so on and so forth. Okay, now I'm going to cheat here. I'm going to pause the video and I'll finish it off, and you can write down the totals, or you can do it yourself. But it's not going to seem like any time has passed when I come back. And shazam, we're all done. So I went through, completed the tally. These are my final results. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this frequency table. I'm going to actually, it's going to be frequency again. You don't really need to title it that way, but it's just going to be a summary. So 4, 6, 8, 5, 4, 2, and 3. So there we go. This would qualify as a frequency table. And now we can move on to the next part, the histogram. So we're going to move on, and this is where I'm going to use the computer. I'm going to pull up, I'm going to use Quattro Pro because that's what's available. If you work with Quattro Pro, you can work with any spreadsheet program. Excel is probably the best bet or the nicest to work with. But Google Docs also works very well for this particular section. All right, I'm sitting at the computer now. All right, I'm sitting at the computer now, and I am entering my information into Quattro Pro. So I'll just do this quickly for you. So I'm just entering it into the columns. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I'm being lazy, just using the short forms. So I have days on the top, frequency on top. Now this is when I transfer that information, or that summary. So 4, 6, 8, 4, 6, 8, 5, 4, 2, 3, 5, 4, 2, 3. All right, so there we are. I've now changed or moved my frequency table into Quattro Pro or a spreadsheet program. That allows us a whole bunch of options to occur. So the first thing I want to do is create a histogram. So I select the data, and you basically want to pick a chart. So every spreadsheet's a little bit different. Insert graph, insert chart. They all kind of work the same. So with Quattro Pro, it's going to be a little bit different for each one. Quattro Pro is kind of not intuitive. So anyway, I'm going to select a bar graph. I don't want 3D, even though 3D is fine. And when I look at the information, I do like how it's shown. The days show up just fine. So I'm going to take that, and now I can add a title here. So days of the week, I'll put as a title. The subtitle, I don't need one. On the x-axis, I'll put day. Y-axis is frequency. You want to make sure you label it appropriately. Hit next. Color scheme, you can pick whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. Then we hit finish. Now I select the area that I want. And there we go. So there is my graph, and you can edit the data. I can get rid of that. I don't need that. And it shows the frequency in a graphical form, so a little bit easier for some people to identify with. So I'm just going to paste that into my note here. Maybe. No, won't be able to. So that's B done. So A is done. Oops. Undo that. So A is done, B is done. So we're moving through then to C part. Create a pictograph. So I'm back at the smartboard here to do C, because a pictograph, the spreadsheet program won't do it, at least a lot of the current ones. You probably find some of the fancy laptop online that'll do it for you, and you're welcome to look. So days of the week, create the pictograph. So basically, it's the exact same thing. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What we do is we choose a symbol. So it's still going to be frequency. And down below here, I'm going to go keep it simple here. So let's go with smiley faces equals 2 days. So there's my legend. So very important that you determine a legend. So smiley face for every 2 days. So Monday, we get 2 smiley faces. I guess I can draw them out. Just going to copy and paste them. Next one, 6. So I need 3 smiley faces. 8. So I need 4 on Wednesday. 2, 3, 4. Thursday I need 5. So there's 2 days, 4 days, and half a face to represent the 1 day. Friday then we get 2 smiley faces. And Saturday gets 1. And Sunday gets 1.5. All right, so there's a pictograph. Now you'll notice the pictograph, the general form of it, if we were to trace it, that peak, that yellow line, looks the exact same as the peaks on this particular page. If I was to trace along it. Okay, so you see the general shape, so the difference between the pictograph and the actual frequency graph, they are the same, it's just a different way to represent it. You're going to see it in this format probably more often in a newspaper because it's a little bit more comfortable for the average viewer to look at. All right, so that completes number C. Now we'll go back to the computer again to do number D. So move over there again. So I'm back at the computer. I'm going to pull up Quattro Pro. Because the data is entered, it's actually an easy task to create the circle graph. I'm just going to re-highlight my data. And I'm going to insert another chart. And this time, I am going to pick a pie graph. And you can go 3D if you want. Make a donut graph. Doesn't really matter which one you go with. You can go that way as well. So there's my 3D rendering. Hit next. Same thing. Put your title in. Make sure it's labeled properly. Your x-axis is days, y-axis is your frequency. Hit next, and go with that, and we'll create that graph right there. So there is a pie graph. Now you can, at some point, if you go a little bit better with it, you can have that show up on there, but I can't remember the exact way to do that. Like I said, it's not as intuitive. If the spaces fit, if you're using a program like Excel and even Google Docs, they will insert this stuff in here. Or what a lot of the programs do, which I prefer, the legend's fine. If you're not printing in color, it causes a headache. So for example, Excel will do this. It'll say, okay, that's Friday. I don't know why my pen is so big. Here's Tuesday. So they have the arrows kind of pointing or coming out of the pie graph, and they don't have this. So it's really up to you. I don't really care. If you're sending me the electronic version or electronic form of this file in terms of a note, then you're probably just going to send it in color anyway. So that format's fine. I have no problems with that. All right. So that finishes up the first part. So here's our histogram, our bar graph. There's our pie graph. So that completes number D, or part B. And I'm going to finish off the rest of this example in the next video.